And we lived there. Again, I can remember very little. And one of the things, you know, most of you know that for most of my life I've been a social worker with the local authority. And when children go through traumatic things, sometimes different things happen in their lives. And one of those is that you can't remember specific things. And that's why I said I can't remember an awful lot between the ages of 1 and 7. But the sad things, or the sad thing is, the things I can remember are all bad things. And that's the sort of effect that when a child is traumatized or goes through a difficult time can happen to an individual. And right to this day, I could only tell you 3 or 4 things up to the age of 7, and all those are bad. And the sort of things that I can remember is seeing my father fighting on the streets of London. Secondly, I can remember something dreadful, that when we were in this prefab, when my father was asleep, he used to hang his trousers over a chair. Remember his age here, 76. And I would go and steal money out of his pocket at 6 and 7 years old. And that to me, as an adult now, just proves the sinful nature that we're born into. And no one taught me how to do it. And why should I do it? But I did it. And I remember getting those old half crowns out of his pocket and going round to the bakers in London on the way to school and spending it on cakes. And that was bad. But that was my background, and that was my life. And the only other thing I remember is when we were in bed, and it was that the old prefabs in those days were basically a room about this size with a kitchenette off here and a toilet normally outside. And I remember knocking at the door when we were asleep that woke us up, and the police coming in and other people, and that's the last time we saw our father. So you can see the trauma that was building up in our lives and what was actually happening to us. And they took our father away, and the press then made something quite big of it, because now we had a situation where 2 youngsters were left without even their father because he no longer could care for us properly because of his age. Going back to 1954, and that era when my mother died, and now all this was happening in 1954 as well. On one occasion, when we were actually spending the money in the baker's shop, and I remember it now, it was under remember the old, or they're still there, the old arches in South London where the railways run across the top of them, and little shops underneath. And I remember walking in on the way to school with my brother, asking, every day we did it, so I must have stolen quite regularly. And we would buy these cakes. And as we came out, suddenly on the wall I saw 2 massive posters, huge posters, and would you believe it, my name, Graham, was up on one of these posters. And I didn't know anything about what was actually happening, but I remember one poster was advertising a film with Rock Hudson in, and another one was advertising something about a man named Billy Graham. And because his name was my name, I remembered it. And that was it, nothing. You know, that was it. I just remember that incident. Our father was taken away, and the next thing we were told regularly he was drinking his milk, which, I don't know if you tell kids that, but he actually died. And then it hit the press that these 2 orphans were left from a Boer War veteran. As a result of that, floods of letters came into the London County Council, the present GLC, offering adoption and home. And after spending a short time with foster parents in South London, an elderly couple who, I'm pleased to say, attended the wedding of Brenda and I, even in their very old age. And we were only there a few months. A couple from Sevenoaks, both teachers, And they were Quakers. And they adopted us. And our surname was changed. And instead of Graham Haylock, it became Graham Endersby. And we were adopted. We lived in a lovely house. It's totally the opposite to what we'd come out of. Here there was lovely house, lovely furniture, lovely lifestyle, private school in Tunbridge. And from one extreme to the other. And the worst thing about that was trying to teach me to play the violin. I thought it was absolutely boring. But that was at the school. And but we used to travel and to school and go on holidays. We had a lovely dog. And life to us was so opposite to what our first 7 years. And we used to come home on the country bus from school and really enjoy looking forward to seeing our new parents. And then one day, about a year on, we got home from school, and there were some people in the home, in our house, with our new father, and we were told that our mother had died. Within a year of being adopted and going through all the change, our second mother had died. And as a result of that, our father couldn't look after us anymore. And so where the Bible says, when your father and mother forsake you or leave you, it might not be their fault. For us, it was 2 lots of deaths. For you, it might be something else, another reason why your parents have not been around for you when you're a child. But for us, it was death. But God said, when that happens, He will be there for us. From then onwards, it was we had to pack up. Our names were reverted to our original names. And then we had about a year of going from children's home to children's home. A very unsettled time until we got into one children's home where we actually stayed. And that was a small children's home of 12. And we were the only orphans. But the sad thing about that, and I mentioned this to Trevor and 1 or 2 others, we were the happiest kids, my brother and I, in that home, because we didn't have any relatives. And because when other relatives came to that children's home and saw their children, it was absolutely dreadful. We're crying and shouting and arguing and fighting. But we had none of that at all. And so, looking back, I feel we were blessed. But then God was still having His hand upon us. And we were the only kids in that home that didn't go anywhere with relatives. And then that's a question, because my father, remember, had 18 other children. And there was no one there for us in the 18 extended family. No one came forward to look after us. And so again, we were left, forsaken. But then, while in the children's home, we were taken into the office one day, my brother and I, and said that a man and lady wanted to take us out to their home and spend times on holiday with them and this sort of thing, because we had no other outlet like that. Now that man and lady was quite famous. They were on television at the time. And George Cansdow. Now he was the first animal sort of man or man.